I reversed engineered over 60 hours of Bradshaw's Instagram content to show exactly why he went viral. And in today's video, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be breaking down the exact psychological tricks and storytelling frameworks that you can use in your own content to blow up just like he did. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So the purpose of this SOP breakdown will be allowing you to hold the scroll, hold attention, to make the audience feel understood, to build trust in your character and your expertise, to turn simple business lessons into emotionally engaging stories so that your audience can be really bought into your character. And this allows you to attract the right viewers, the followers, customers, clients, whatever ICP you're targeting, it will attract. And allows you to create content that feels much personal without being very random and overly private. And so I'll be breaking down 9 tricks and 9 psychological frameworks that you can use in your own storytelling to enunciate and to emphasize emotions in your story that will 10x your engagement. Number 1 is a curiosity gap. And curiosity gap is basically a space between what the viewer knows and what they want to know, or like where they want to get and the dream outcome they want to have. For example, a weak hook would be copying creators is bad for your personal brand, because the answer is already provided, right? It gives away the conclusion immediately. Get the idea that copying creators equal bad. So there's not much payload that you actually get and you receive from the video as a whole, because you just know the answer right off the bat. The viewer understands the entire point without actually needing to keep watching. And it's also predictable because most people already know copying can weaken originality, right? It's abstract, meaning you don't actually understand what bad means, right? Impersonal, meaning there's no character, event, or emotional state or emotional attachment that you can have with a video, right? It doesn't speak to your emotions. And it's also missing curiosity gap because it doesn't make you wonder what's happened. It just tells you straight away. If you change a little bit about that and change it to copying successful creators nearly destroyed my personal brand, this creates lots of unanswered questions such as which creator, what did you copy, how did it actually destroy your brand, and what happened next? And so a good rule of thumb would be your hook needs to provide enough information to create importance and to create actual context about what your video is going to be about, but not enough information to actually complete the story. A lot of creators would call this concept opening a curiosity loop, where you plant a seed in the viewer's brain, but you don't actually reveal the full answer until the end. And so here are a few plug and play frameworks that you can just use automatically in your own content. Take a screenshot if you need. Next is the pattern interrupt, and people scroll because most content feels predictable, but what the pattern interrupt does is it makes the viewer go, wow. Because a pattern interrupt hook sounds both unexpected, emotionally loaded, contradictory, slightly dangerous, socially uncomfortable, and opposite to common advice. It allows the viewer to think, wow, I've never actually heard it before like this. Or, damn, like this guy's out in my face, right? Like he's kind of crazy about it. He must know what he's talking about. So some of the examples across different niches could be, my best performing video attracted the worst people. You see how there's a huge contrast. My best performing attracted the worst people. That's what gets people to stop scrolling. Posting consistently was destroying my confidence. The fact that you're honing on destroying your confidence, that's unexpected because most people would think that posting consistently would increase your confidence, but rather it did the opposite. And so it stops the viewer from scrolling and makes them think, so why? And you can see how all of these all have some contradictory or emotionally loading or unexpected factor about this. And so I've provided a checklist for you about how to actually create a pattern interrupt hook. Does this sound anything different from normal content advice? If it does, scratch that. Try create a new angle from it. If you're unsure what an angle is, check out my previous video. Does it contain a contradiction? Contradictions are your best friend. You need to find contradictions because that's what gets people thinking and curious. Would the viewer actually naturally ask why? Is the claim believable enough to keep watching? If you say an outlandish claim, no one's going to watch because they know it's probably just clickbait or scroll bait. But if your claim is genuinely achievable, like I helped my friend make £1 million in the last 30 days, that's actually believable. it's quite crazy. The claim is quite crazy, but it's doable. And so that's what gets people to stop scrolling. And does the rest of the script actually prove it? If your hook has nothing related to your rest of the script or rest of the story, it's going to drop off. Your engagement's going to drop off right after your hook. So you want to make the hook somewhat related to the rest of your script. Number 3 is emotional identification, because people keep watching what they recognize themselves in the story. Like I said, psychology is all about you. It's all about the ego, and people love knowing and just thinking about themselves. So what you do with this hook is you create identification by describing their private thoughts, their quiet fears, their embarrassing habits, their repeated frustrations, and moments that people just rarely admit publicly. And what that does is you're kind of the voice in their own head. And once that voice has been materialized, they're like, damn, this guy actually knows me so well. And so a surface level statement could be founders struggle with consistency, but an emotionally specific statement could be you open your notes to write, reread the first few sentences 10 times, compare it to someone more successful, and quietly decide that you'll post tomorrow instead. You see how that's got more emotional baggage, and that actually resonates with the ICP you're targeting. Because the second version feels real, because the audience can picture themselves doing it. They can see themselves in the shoes of your portrayal. And so some emotional categories to use, and these are really helpful. So listen carefully, grab out a pen and paper and note these down. So fear, which is looking stupid, being judged, failing publicly, wasting time, sounding fake, being ignored, not discovering they are not naturally good at content. The next category is frustration. So for my ICP, they're rewriting scripts constantly. They're receiving attention, but no actual trust or no engagement. Seeing less experienced creators grow faster, and they're wondering to themselves, why am I not growing faster even though I'm following every single tip that I can find? Or knowing what to say, but not knowing actually how to package it and how to represent it in a content form. Or consuming advice without gaining clarity, where you just scroll, save, and scroll, save. We've all been there. We literally just scroll on the For You page, see something that's useful, save it, and just never look back on it, right? And fundamentally, that's targeting the frustration side of your emotions. And so if you can really lean into that with your hook, the person who does that so often will literally say, damn, like that's me. The next category is insecurity. So believing their personality is boring, right? Thinking their subject is too ordinary, or they're not too niche enough, or they're too unniche, right? It goes both ways. Or feeling less charismatic than their competitors and assuming their ideas are not original enough, right? These are all little thoughts in their brain that they don't say out loud, but they feel. And once you speak what they feel, that's when your hook becomes just 10 times more powerful. Desire. And that's being recognized, building authority, right? Getting the outcome their content is meant to create, or the outcome they want through their content. Feeling proud of their content, actually like knowing they put in the work and they actually reap the rewards, right? Having a repeatable system and becoming someone people actively want to know. These are all the main categories that you should target in your hooks if you want to go with an emotionally baggaged hook. Next is escalation. Like I said, a strong story doesn't just remain emotionally flat. It's not just flatlining the whole way around, right? Constantly you're changing narratives. At first you're at a high peak, and then you go low and then high and then low, maybe low and then high and then low again, right? Like every single second of your video should somewhat be changing the viewer's emotions. So each sentence should increase at least one of the following: risk, emotional pain, curiosity, conflict, cost, importance, and personal meaning. Because a weak sequence would look like, I copied a creator, the video did badly, I learned to be original. That's so boring, mate. Like, no one wants to hear about this. But if you change a little bit about that sequence and said, first, I copied this hook, then I copied the structure, and then I started changing my own opinion so they fit his style, and eventually the scripts looked better than before, but sounded nothing like me. You see how through this way you're just escalating and you're constantly adding more and more and more fuel to the fire. And finally at the end, you have a peak and then immediately a low, right? A huge contrast. And so a good rule of thumb for your script would be try to create contrast every single sentence. And of course, that's not always doable, but if you're able to create a high and then immediately a low, that's when the engagement of the viewer drives through the roof. And so an escalation ladder might look like this. You make a small mistake, you have a repeated behavior, you have a hidden consequence, and then you have an emotional cost and then an identity level problem. Another example could be I copied a hook, then I started copying full formats. My content became harder to differentiate. You see how it escalates and escalates. And then I stopped trusting my own ideas. That's an emotional cost, right? And then I built a brand that no longer represented me. That's an identity-focused cost. Next is the inner dialogue, which is do not explain what happened. Explain what you believed it meant. Because right now, people don't actually care about information anymore. They care about opinions. And they care about how people think, not what people think. And so this is where your audience emotionally connects to you as a person, not as a character you're meant to portray. For example, the video got 800 views, right? But one layer deep, I immediately thought the idea was terrible. And one layer deeper, which is your inner dialogue, that I started wondering whether I was simply not interesting enough for content. You see how on the surface, the video got 800 views. That's just information, right? And everyone gets 800 views, right? But what makes that 800 views special and actually resonating is the fact that it made you think you're not interesting enough for content. And it added some emotional cost to that. And so a few inner dialogue templates could be, I started thinking, I remember wondering whether, for a moment I genuinely believed. The part I did not want to admit was, I began asking myself, I thought this meant. Quietly, I was scared that. I did not say it out loud, but. And a rule of thumb is the best inner thought is usually something your audience has already thought of before, but rarely admitted in real life or even in content. 6 is misdirection, which allows the viewer to assume one thing before actually revealing something much bigger or something much different. It shouldn't be dishonest. It should just be a mental reframe. It should guide the audience towards an understandable assumption and then reframe it so they actually see it from your point of view rather than from their point of view. So for example, my most viral video nearly destroyed my business. The viewer may assume it caused controversy, right? It damaged your reputation, you attack online. However, you can reveal the fact that it actually attracted a huge but commercially useless audience. And you changed your content to please the wrong people and your positioning became weaker. So rather than the fact that it actually completely destroyed your business, it didn't actually do that. It just allowed you to gain a more insightful lesson from that event. It allowed you to know that even though the views were massive, the people that it attracted were useless and practically unbuyable from you, right? And your positioning became weaker. And now that you've learned about how your positioning became weaker, you can then improve that. And that's a story of its own. That you can say, oh, I learned this. This was the worst mistake I had. And then this is what I did to fix that. And that's something so interesting because people don't care about value anymore. People care about people. And the main reason why I'm so dedicated to just spreading and I guess injecting authenticity in just this info industry, because I believe the next wave will be characterized through authenticity. So if you're interested, you can click the link below to book a call with me, and then we can discuss how to make your content much more authentic. Anyhow, the template for misdirection would be, at first I thought the problem was, and then the obvious explanation or the misconception that people think, right? And then you immediately say, but what was actually happening was, and then you delve into a deeper explanation. 7th, we're nearly there. A reframe changes what the event actually means, right? This is the I never thought about it like that moment. For example, old beliefs could be low views mean the content is bad. But if you reframe that concept, you can look at it from a viewpoint of low views can actually reveal the packaging failed rather than the idea that failed. Another old belief could be a script makes content fake. A new belief could be a borrowed belief makes content fake. But structure simply makes your real belief easier to understand. You see how you went from point A to point B and you walked your audience through that and allowed them to actually find out, and the fact that you're just guiding their mental reframe. And lastly, an old belief could be more followers create more customers, but a new belief could be more followers make your positioning harder to protect. Because imagine you have 1,000 people how many of that 1,000 people actually are your ICP? Probably much fewer than if you have 1,000 people specifically catered towards your brand. And so the reframe formula would be, I thought your old interpretation, but, and then inject your new interpretation, the real problem was, and then your deeper truth that you realize through your experience. And so here are some plug and play versions that you can just use for yourself. So make sure to take a screenshot or write this down. 8th is a character demonstration. So you don't actually tell the audience what kind of person you are. You show them through your visuals and through your content, because it's so weak when you just say, I care about authenticity, and not showing it. But a much stronger way of showing that you're truly authentic is describing and explaining the story where your client sent you a script based on a proven viral format. It was well written and it sounded nothing like him. So then you told him not to post it. Imagine someone seeing that story, right? In their own mind, they make the judgment of you being authentic rather than you telling them that you're authentic, right? Because you let the audience conclude the fact that you have standards, you have authenticity, you actually care about long-term positioning, and you will not chase views at any cost. And so these are some of the traits you can demonstrate in your own storytelling, such as discipline, honesty, courage, care, patience, conviction, humility, expertise, loyalty to the audience, and the willingness to challenge popular advice. These are all inspirational and aspirational and likable features that people follow for who you are. And so you see how this just adds an extra layer into your content rather than your whole content just being value filled and just forcing it down people's throat, right? This way you're actually getting people to come in naturally and actually like you for who you are, and then potentially buy from you just because they like you. So a few character story prompts could be, you can tell a story, but you chose a harder but more honest option. You can tell a story where you admitted that your original belief was wrong, shows humility. You can tell a story where you protected a customer, student, patient, audience member, team, or your own values from a short-term win. You can tell a story where you acted despite embarrassment, and also you can tell a story where you refuse to copy what everyone else is doing. It shows you're going against the wave, and it shows you have your own ethics. And lastly, a memorable final line. The final line should compress the lesson in just one sentence. It should be easy to understand. It should be easy to repeat. It should be closely connected to your story, and it should be emotionally sharp and specific enough to feel original. And so here are a few examples that I'll line up for you. A few examples could be, you copy the format and deleted the person. More attention will not fix positioning, it will expose it. A viral video is useless when it makes the wrong person remember you. Perfectionism is fear pretending to have standards. Your audience cannot trust a person you keep editing out. One buyer is worth more than 10,000 strangers. You see how all these are kind of like Pinterest quote liners, right? And that's kind of the vibe you're trying to get at. You're trying to get at like that quote-ish type vibe. And so these are some final line formulas that you can just use to summarize your whole story and compress it into one line. Make sure to take a screenshot of this. Well, this will be the video for today, and I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you found it informational. And if you are interested to book a call with me, then click the link below or just follow my Instagram, because I'd really appreciate it. I'm trying to grow my content agency, and I'm trying to bring a new wave of authenticity. And so if you or someone else that you know resonate with the message and just feel like everyone should start being more authentic, then just give me a follow. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.